Okay. We're on 21B, which is Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, 21B. We're about 10 lines from the top. 8 lines from the top. It says like this, Vanirtza Nikne Beritzia. First of all, thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. And this chus of a learning. Should have to play some English immediately. I have a mechanical fence. Say that the Nirtza, we're going back, we're quoting from the Mishnah. The Nirtza, the slave that had his ear pierced, how was the master acquiring him? Through piercing the ear. Iksiv, we quote the verse. This is what the Gemara does. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah and then brings a biblical source for it. Iksiv, the master will pierce his ear with an awl. Now this Nirtza, this slave that's by the master for 50 years, or until the Jubilee, he acquires himself with the Jubilee, when the Jubilee comes. And he also acquires himself with the death of the master. And as if the master dies, he doesn't have to serve the inheritors. Yeah.
Do any of the books there have a picture or a drawing of what this looks like on the ear?
Oh, I don't know. They don't have the ear.
I was wondering
what is that? Oh, they just bring a bush. We'll see soon. They don't have a picture of the ear or that you have to look in the movies.
Is this like an earring? Is that
we're gonna see that? We're gonna see in a moment. That we're gonna see soon. Yeah. Where do we see those two ways where the slave acquires himself? I'm sorry, do you have a question? Yeah, an awl. An awl is what the shoemakers use to make holes, to put the laces through and to sew it. They have to they have to go through the leather. It's an awl.
That's how they make the holes on the belts also.
Yeah, like the holes on the belt. What page? What's the page number? Oh yeah, you're on the right page number. Okay. The ksiv, it's written in the pasuk that he should serve him. And he doesn't serve the son or the daughter, which means that if the master dies, he doesn't continue on to serve the inheritors. That's one of the ways that this slave goes free. Li'olam, forever. Take a look, David, at an awl. It's showing you a picture of an awl.
Thank you. I've actually seen it.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Did you bring one, Professor?
That means for Jubilee, doesn't really mean forever. When it says that use an awl, I would only know that use an awl. How do you know you can use a sharp thorn? Or another type of thorn. You can use a needle. A needle sounds a little lighter than an awl.
Yeah, it is.
But I would assume that if you can use a needle, the slave is going to say, "Do me a favor, use a what are the needle? What's that thing that they put the needles in people? That's like a therapy.
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Use an acupuncture needle. You can hardly feel it.
The earring won't fit through.
No, it doesn't. You don't need an earring.
Right.
It's just a hole. V'machad v'mekadeach, or you can use a mekadeach is a auger, which is like a big corkscrew. Use it to get through like hard, concrete and stuff. Those things. But it's a maybe you can use one of those. V'michdav, or you can use a type of pen, a stylus or something. Not the stylus for the Apple. Like an old quill. Talmud Laimar. So the pasuk. How do you know you're allowed to use all of those for lakachta? It says, you take. L'Rabbis kol davar shenikach biyad. That means anything that you can take in the hand. Div Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yomer, Rabbi says, Rabbi is a contemporary of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Says, Ma martzeh miyuchad shel mateches. Just like the martzeh, the oil is metal. Af kol shel mateches. It needs to be metal. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to explain in a moment what the basis of the machlekes is. But meanwhile, davar acher, another interpretation, or some people erase this. Davar acher. Hamartzeh, when it says hamartzeh, lahavim martzeh gadol, means they can use a big awl. Sounds like there's a famous big awl somewhere that you can use. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says Yudin Baribi. This important person Yudin. Baribi means a great person of the generation. He would teach. Kishahin writes in. Sorry.
Here says that the large awl would cut instead of making.
Oh, it has a like a blade on it. Large one. Okay.
Possible for a Cohen to be a slave?
We're gonna see some. You're going ahead. Wait. She would teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot.
No,
He would teach Kishain Reitzin when they would pierce the ear. Ein Reitzin Ela b'Milsa, they would only pierce in the ear lobe. Milsa means the fat ear, which means the lobe. That's according to Berebi. You're Yudin Beribi. Chama Maimra. The Chama say Ein Eved Kayan Nirtzam Nasa Balmum. A slave that's a Kayan. Right, we're talking about a Jewish slave. He's a Kohen. He wants to stay for another 50 years. You say, tough luck. You can't. Why not? Because you're going to become a balmum. You're going to get a hole in your ear. But the hole in the ear lobe is not a mum. An earring hole is not a mum. It would only be a hole higher up in there. If you say it's in the ear lobe, he writes in, how does he become a balmum? And it must be that they pierce through the cartilage. That's why he's a balmum. That's why he's gonna have a hole in the cartilage of the ear. Okay. So, but my kamiflagi, where did we get this from? This machlekes. I'm sorry, Rabbi Naftali. You want to ask something?
Yeah, how can a Kohen do this? Doesn't he have another set of obligations?
Well, he probably stole, and he's getting sold as a. Actually, did we? I think we had a machlekes if someone that stole, which one of this ones, one that sells himself or the one that stole, can become a nirtza. But according to one opinion, for sure, any slave can become a nirtza. So whatever it is, he sold himself because of his debts, and then he wants to stay on for longer.
I guess he could sell himself subject to his exemption when he has duties as a Kohen.
No, even he probably has to stay over there. I would assume he can't go. The rest of his family would take over for him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What happens if a Kohen gets a job and then it's his time to go to the Beis Hamikdash? Does he take off the job, or does he have responsibilities to his employer? Employee. No, but that having land would free you from those obligations. But he doesn't have land, so now he has to get a job. So he gets a job. No, when you have land, you have more free time. Except during harvest. And planting. But you have several months of the year where you're free. Otherwise, you have a job. You have every single day of the year.
Those are the months that are not the holiday months.
Actually, the holiday months are probably the months that they
Aren't they all supported by other people's tithes?
That's the holidays.
But is he working at all? Does he get tithes?
Yeah, if that's enough.
But the Cohen only works under like one shift every many weeks. So he'll take a vacation.
All right. Okay. Let's say he doesn't want to give him that week.
Another owner.
No, I would assume that takes priority. That his boss is going to take priority because that's a monetary obligation.
For the big boss?
Over.
Big B?
Yeah. over
that
the
little boss
base of
is
Migdash.
That little the blue-eyed boss is gonna be really trouble.
Okay, I don't know.
So would you say superior, the monetary obligation or the?
Look, what happens if someone has a job and it comes time for davening? Does he go to shul? He can't go to shul. At certain parts of davening, yes, but certain parts no. So he has to skip those. Right? If he has a boss, he can't say certain parts of davening.
Tries to work.
Right.
The boss will give a few minutes to go over the other.
If he allows him. But,
I had that situation.
yeah.
I was thinking maybe like, you know how they call them for jury duty. Yeah, most of the time the employer will allow the employee to go to jury duty, so maybe that's what
Maybe.
they're considering.
Maybe Hill's saying it's like jury duty,
Yeah.
but I think that's a American law. That,
Yeah, but maybe based on Migdash.
maybe. Okay. What's the basis of this machlokes? We're going back to what type of instrument you use to make the hole in the ear. What's the machlokes? The Rebbe Darsh Klali Prati. Rebbe Darshans in general in Shas. This is Rabbi Shmuel versus Rabbi Akiva. How do you darshan? Whenever you have a general term, and then you have a specific, and then you have a general, do you view that the specific is explaining the general term, and therefore it limits the entire general rule, and then you're left with the specific, and then if you have a general afterwards, so you come include more things, but you've just limited it entirely. That's called klal prata klal. What do you say? We'll see in a moment an example. I'm sorry?
Didn't Rabbi Shimon define that in the 13?
Yeah, exactly. Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael has a klal prata klal. Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, doesn't. Rabbi Akiva says that you do riba miyat riba. You say that the specific is not explaining the generalization, so it's not limiting it. It's just taking off one thing because of that specific. And then when you add, then you're adding more in. Okay, so it goes like this. The Rebbe Darsh Klali Prate Velakach, it says you should take, doesn't say what. Klal, that's a generalization. Martzeya, then it says an all, oh, that's a specific, that's a prat. So now you're limiting it to the Martzeya. Ba'aznai, back to the ear, Bedelas in the door, doorway, door. Chazru Klal, now we're back to whatever it is. Klal Prat, Klal Yatanel, Klal Prat. So what we're doing now is we're saying that it's going to be something like the specific, because we're adding more in. Ma'aprat Mefur Shamateches, just like the prat, the specific was an all, which is metal. We're including anything that's metal, which means you could use any of those corkscrews or whatever needles that are metal, something like that, but not the.
Why is Buzz not listed as a follow, not in the Santa?
It's hermeneutical.
Yeah, maybe it really is Hanasata.
Hermeneutical.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What did you all just mumble?
What he said was ba'ozna yubadelas is the generalization. In his ear, it doesn't say what, and the door, it doesn't say what tool is being used. He says that's a generalization. He's saying, but it also says you should put it, and the word put it, benasata, ba'ozna, that should be the generalization, not because it doesn't say what to put. Okay, it's a good point. Rabbi Yossi Darish. Riba Yumiyati. Rabbi Yossi learns Riba Yumiyat. The generalization, no, I'm sorry, inclusion and exclusion. Balakachta, it means you should take, that's including everything, that's Riba, that would be everything. Might say that's excluding something, that's Miyat, that's the all. Bazne Vadelas Chazariba, now we're going back to include. So Riba Miyat Riba, when you include, exclude, and include, Riba Hakal, you're including everything. So why do you have an exclusion? My Rabbi Kalmili, you have everything. So my Miyat, what's the exclusion? Miyatzam, you're excluding one thing, which is the this cream or some sort of acid that would burn a hole through the ear. That is not acceptable. We exclude that. Amar Mar. Okay, so those are two approaches to how we look at wording in the Torah. It's really a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel throughout Shas. Over here, it's a machlekes between Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi. Amar Mar, the master Amitzeya. And it says all Lahavi Martzia Gadol is coming to include the big Martzia. My mashma, where do you get this from? Because Rava says Hayerech Hamiyumanis Shabiyerech. When it says Machlekes, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim and Masechtas Chulin about where the Giranasha is, if it's in the right leg or if it's in the left leg, or if it's in both, or if it's in both of them. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's only in the right leg because it says Hayerech Al Kaf Hayerech. It's on the thigh with the definite article. And then what does that mean? It's on the main one, which means it's on the right. So what does that mean? The most important one means that means the most important all, which is this big all. Okay, Amar Rabbi Lazar.
Restricts.
Yudin Beribi Hayadairis. Yudin Beribi would teach. Kashain writes, and when they would pierce the ear, in writes in El Bamilsa, they would only pierce by the earlobe. The Chacham say in Eved Kain, it's in place Nasabal Mum. The Chachamim say that we don't pierce a Kayan that's a slave. We don't pierce his ear because he's going to become blemished. The Gemara says, so what if he becomes blemished? V'yasabal Mum, let him become blemished. We have rules that a Kayan that's blemished can't serve in the temple. Doesn't mean that he can't be blemished. Can't serve. Okay, so he can't serve, but if he's blemished, he's blemished. Amar Rabba Bar Shila Makrav Shavel Mishpachtai. The pasuk says that he has to return to his family after he's completed his service, L'muchzik Shav Mishpachtai, to his position in the family. If he would be a Kayan and he's supposed to serve in the temple, now he won't be able to serve, so that means we can't do this to him. He has to be able to go back to his position. Yeah. This is not like a prison sentence. Someone, they come out of prison, they probably don't go back to their being the head of the company that they were before, right? This is just a slavery.
Depends what the company.
Depends which company. Yeah, but this is he sold into slavery. He's supposed to go back to his position. It was just a monetary issue. He lost his, whatever. He needed the funds, and he sold himself, and now he's going back to his original position. But it's interesting if he stole. It's interesting that he has to go back to his original position. Maybe it's following the opinion. I don't remember the machlekes. We had a machlekes before. If someone stole, if he could be sold for 50 years, or if it was only the one that stole, right?
Was it different if he sold himself?
It was different if he sold himself or the court sold him. If the court sold him, that was because he stole.
Perhaps.
Remember that?
Perhaps it was that was returning to his Kohanim family.
Right.
Not a reference to our regular.
Understand. You're saying it only means that.
Yeah.
It only means that.
Meaning
I thought it also meant that.
He just said Bishal.
That's true. Here it quotes, and he shall return to his own family. I'm not sure if the own is a
Right. It definitely means the Kohanim. The question is if it means more than that. Okay. Ibailo, they have a question. Every Kayan, if you have a Kayan that's a Jewish slave, can the master give him a non-Jewish maidservant to mate with, that the master should be able to keep the children as slaves? Mar says, Chiddushu. Do we say that this is a novelty? If it's a Chiddush, look, the fact that a Jew can live with a non-Jewish slave is already a Chiddush. It's already something, a surprise. Now you're going to tell me, but for sure not a Kayan. 1 second. The whole thing is a surprise. If it could work for a Yisrael, that a Jewish person can live with a non-Jewish slave. So how could Kayan could also, right? What should be the difference? I told you I had this teacher that told me his father could ask him any question. He could answer any question in the world, except one question. How could an Eved Ivri live with a non-Jewish woman? Says it's a Yid with a non-Jew. How could that? He couldn't answer. Anyway, he told his father an answer. According to Chassidus, he gave him an answer. Anyway, they had these group of public school kids came to this yeshiva. They were showing them anyway. They sat down, and the teacher says, "Ask me any question." So I whispered to one of them, "Ask, how could this?" Say, "Who told you that?" Anyway, okay. So if a Jewish person can live, a Kayan could also live with the non-Jewish maidservant. Or maybe Shani Kayanim are different. We know that Kayanim have special laws. Maybe a Kayan cannot be given the non-Jewish maidservant to live with. Rav Amar Mutter, it's Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says the Kayan is allowed. Shmuel Amar Aser, Shmuel says no, Kayan is not allowed. Who's the halacha going to be like? It's regular, what's it called? It's regular Isurim. The halacha looks like it would be like Rav, that it's allowed. Amalei Rav Nachman or Rav Anan. Rav Nachman says, very good. Rav Nachman says to Rav Anan, Ki avisa beimar Shmuel. Rav Nachman says to Rav Anan, he says like this. You see, this was said, no, it doesn't tell us who said this. Rav Nachman says to Rav Anan, when you were in the house of Shmuel, Biskumadri Italalisu, you were playing with tokens. It means like that sounds like you were playing jacks or something, like you were fooling around. My time, you should have asked him such a good question. How could you say that it's usher to give the kayan that the kayan should mate with this non-Jewish maidservant? We have a statement. The sages said, why can't you put the all through the Eved Ivri, through his ear? Because he's going to be a balmum, and he's supposed to be able to return. And if you're going to tell me according to Shmuel that ein Rabbi Maislei Shifcha Kananes, that the master can't give him a non-Jewish maidservant, typically we have a much better reason why he doesn't put the all, because he can't even say, I love my wife and my children and I want to stay here, because he never had a wife and children there. The master wasn't allowed to give it to him. Why do you have to tell me it's a problem of putting the all through his ear? Because he won't be able to go back to be a Kayan. It's because he only stays if he has a wife. And the master wasn't able to give him a wife. It must mean that the master can give him a wife. He just can't say. It's a kasha on Shmuel. Sulay Midi. Nachman says, I rest my case. Where's a question? Kayan Mao be fastayar. You know, there's a halacha that if the soldiers in war, if they see a beautiful woman, they're allowed to take her as a wife. And there's a whole discussion in the parsha. He lives with her once, and then he holds her for 30 days, and then if he still wants her, anyway, it's a discussion exactly. But Kayan goes to war, and he finds a non-Jewish wife in battle, non-Jewish woman. So is he allowed to take her and live with her? Chiddushu. This whole concept is a big chiddush, that he's allowed to marry this woman. She's not really converting. He's like forcing a conversion on her. And she's converting, but by force. It's not a real. It's a very not typical case. Chiddushu Leishna Kaim Leishna Yisrael. Is it do we say that it doesn't matter? Look, even the fact that a Jew can do this is a surprise. So what's the difference of Kohen or a regular Jew? Maybe Shani Kayan. So maybe the Kayan is different because the Kayan has special mitzvahs. He wouldn't be allowed to marry a woman like this, so therefore he can't live with this woman. They can't marry converts, exactly. Rab Amar Mutter. Rab says that he's allowed. Special exception. It's in battle. Shmuel Amar Aser. Shmuel says it's prohibited. When it comes to the first relations, where it says that he has like this passion for her, so everyone agrees that that's permissible. Well, but why? Because like the Torah is telling us that rather that he do this in this permissible way rather than to do it in a sinful way. We're afraid that if he doesn't do it according to this protocol, then he's going to end up sinning. So we give him this protocol how we should do it, how we should have the first relations. Keep pligi. Where's the machlekes Rav and Shmuel? But biyashniya, he's allowed to take her back home and to live with her afterwards. Rav Amar Mutter. Rav says he's allowed to because it was a special exemption. Shmuel Amar Aser. Shmuel says he's not allowed.
Why would doing this create a change in the
Oh, so no, there's different pshatim in that, but it doesn't actually. There is a pshat that it changes the Yetzer Hara when it's permissible.
When it's written, then
right. Right.
When it's a mitzvah,
Right. Right, very good. That's a good shot. It's a very good shot. Levi saying that like the B'Torah K'neged Yetzer Hara means that when the Torah tells you that it's something that you're allowed to do, or that it's a mitzvah, so then the Yetzer Hara goes the opposite. It says, no, I don't really need it. So it's a good shot. It's not the Pashup shot. Pashup shot is that we're afraid that they're just gonna like ignore the rules because it's too tempting. So Rab Amar Mutter, why does Rab say that it's allowed even afterwards? Because it became permissible for the first relation, so this woman isn't permissible for the kohen, for whoever it is. Shmuel Amar also, Shmuel says no, the Havaleg Yaris, she's a convert. Yaris l'kohen lechazia, a kohen cannot marry a convert, and she's a convert. Ikad Amri, there are those that say this machlekes exactly the opposite. Everyone holds that he's not allowed to marry her afterwards. The second relations is prohibited. Because she's a convert. The whole machlekes is the first relations. Rab says that it's permissible to have the first relations because the Torah is speaking against the Yetzer Hara, which means it knows that if it doesn't allow it, they're going to do it anyway. Shmuel says, Shmuel says that it's prohibited. Since you can't, in the end, finish the whole protocol of take her into the house and marry her. So therefore, you can't even start. If you can't finish the take her into your house and marry her, then you can't even start, but you can't even take her in the first place. Rabbanan was taught in a brayse.
That's the origin that don't start something you can't finish.
Maybe. Dr. Stein says, don't start something you can't finish. You see in captivity. Means you see this woman that's a captive by your enemy, right? Could be even she's already a captive, that's a possibility, right? We're talking about that when you're going into battle, you find her and you take her just as a captive, not that you take her to sell and then you to the slave market. And then afterwards you change your mind, you say, no, maybe this one I'm going to marry. That can't be like that. It has to be that you want her right away when you see her, not that she was taken for something else and then you're just going to use her later. Ashes, it says a woman. Actually, Ashes means a woman of. Even if she's a married woman, that means a woman of. She's already married. She belongs to someone. A non-Jewish husband, of course. Nevertheless, you're allowed to take this non-Jewish wife. She's already a wife of a non-Jew, but it's battle. They stole her in battle.
Isn't that what Shaul, when he was supposed to kill Amalek, they kept it? Didn't they keep the women in the best?
Yeah.
Was it Shaul or who ended?
Shmuel came and
Shmuel.
killed. It was Shaul that left him.
Yeah.
And then Shmuel came and killed him.
Right.
Lady B'Torah is Yefas Tayar, a beautiful woman. Lady B'Torah El Keneged Yetzer Hara. The Torah is speaking to the Yetzer Hara, which is the Torah is saying, Mutav Sheichel Yisrael Basar Temusis Shchutes. If there's an animal that's dying, it's not appropriate to go shecht it quickly to be able to eat it, but it's acceptable. It's better than eating the animal after it dies without shechit. So in other words, it's called the b'diavad. You know. No, they're gonna convert. Oh, a non-Jew. You mean this wife is married to? Yeah, I think Rashi and Chumash says that. Yeah. Right. Not for. That's fine. We're talking about the non-Jews. No, it's talking about you go into battle and you find over there a woman that's married. She's wearing her wedding ring, and you're allowed to take her. What do you mean she's married? She's not Jewish. They're not this. What do you mean marriage? There were two witnesses, Kiddushin, and all of this. It says, yeah, there was a naseh v'davak b'ishtay that creates a marriage even by non-Jews. Oh, you're asking what does it mean in Ishus? Means you don't have the negative prohibitions. As I say.
Still negative.
No, lava b'machlal say is an assay. It's not a negative. Positive.
For
Right?
non-Jews?
I don't know how it works for the non-Jews. You're asking the beginning of Taisus contradicts the end. That it's Einishus Bakutis. Okay. But he means that you don't have the negative prohibition. Yeah.
We have no idea what was.
What happened was
at that end.
what he's discussing is that if someone commits adultery with a non-Jewish woman, it's not it doesn't go under the negative prohibition, even though she was a married woman, but it goes under a positive prohibition that a man should cleave to his wife, not a negative. So he says, but if it's is it yes or is it no?
And if he wasn't married?
We're talking about if a non-Jewish man commits adultery with a non-Jewish woman, is it considered an adultery? Because do they have marriage? Do they have marriages? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That we learned about the minor male that gets married, and like it wasn't like
Nothing. Right.
It's nothing, but there's a strangulation that is different. Like for non-Jews, non-Jewish, and for a minor male, instead of stoning, I guess it's a regular punishment.
That's not talking about a marriage. A minor can't make a marriage. It's talking about that someone is intimate with a minor or something. Okay. All yechlabasa temusas nevelas, and they shouldn't eat the dying animals as a carcass without being shechted. So that's what the Torah is saying, that makes a kosherized way of living with this woman. V'chashakta, and you desire her. Afal pi she'enena, even if she's not pretty. Nevertheless, that doesn't affect anything. And if other people don't think she's pretty, he desires her. Ba v'loy ba u'b'chaverta. He can only take her. He can't take her and her friend. V'lakachta, and you will take l'kuchen yesh lach ba. It's going to be considered a marriage, even though you're forcing a conversion on her. It's still going to be considered a marriage. L'chol isha, for you as a wife. You can't take two women. You can't take two women and say, you know what? Let me not be selfish. I'll take one for myself and one for my father, one for my son. That it doesn't work like that. You can only take one. And you bring her into your house. It means that you can't oppress her in battle. It's a big discussion here what this means. You can't oppress her in battle. It sounded like that you were able to live with her once. And it's Machlekes Rashi and Taisus here. Okay. Taner Rabbanan. Taner Nebraisa. Mamar Yoimar. If going back to the slave, if he says, I will surely, if he surely says, I want to stay because I love my wife and children, I want to stay in slavery. He has to say it twice. Let's say he says at the beginning of the 6 years, he says, I want to stay. And at the end of the 6 years, he doesn't say that. Notice he didn't say it twice. Or maybe, possibly there's different girsayos here in Rashi. Maybe he said it twice at the beginning, but he didn't say it at the end. So he doesn't get his ear pierced. It's because the pasuk says, I don't want to go free. He has to say that at the time of going free, that he doesn't want to go free. It means he needs to say it at the beginning and the end. Let's say he only says it at the end, but not at the beginning. So he doesn't go free. But he has to say it while he's still a slave. We're thinking that he's saying it before he goes into slavery. Okay. Amar Mar. Talked before. We're going to go back to explain this price that we just said. He says at the beginning of the 6 years, and he doesn't say at the end of the 6 years. He doesn't get his ear pierced. Because it says in the pasuk, I don't want to go free. That means he has to say it at the time of going free. Why did the Bryson need to bring the pasuk? I don't want to go free. We're thinking now that he is only saying it at the beginning of the slavery and not at the end. And what's at the beginning? The beginning is before the master gave him a wife and children. So how could he say at the beginning, I love my wife and children, if his master never gave him that? It was just at the beginning. And another question is, Amar b'seif sheish v'leim b'tchilas sheish. He says it at the end, and he doesn't say at the beginning. Ein inertzi is not. They don't pierce his ear. Shnemar eved, because it says to be a slave. At the seif sheish lav evedu. How do you know seif sheish is not still a slave? Maybe he's still a slave. It's just the end of the 6 years. Amar Rava, so Rava comes along and says, when we said b'tchilas sheish, you know what we meant? B'tchilas pruta achreina. We didn't really mean the beginning of the 6 years. We mean the beginning of the end. But the last amount of basically, as his slavery is finishing, he's saying that I want to stay. He says it at the beginning of the last pruta and he has to say it b'seif pruta and at the end of the last pruta. So at those last moments, he has to say twice, I want to stay in slavery. Taner Rabbanan was taught in the Brisa, and that's the way we answer the question that he already has a wife and children because it's at the end. Taught in the Brisa, Loi. Ishubanim. Let's say he has a wife and children, the slave. But the master doesn't have a wife and children. Can't pierce his ear. Why? The master is a bachelor. The slave can't stay there for another 50 years. He has to say he loves the master and his wife and his household. He loves the master's household. There's no wife and children. There's no household. The Rabbi Yishabanim v'layeni Shabanim. If the master has a household, a wife and children, and he doesn't, the slave doesn't, in an he can't pierce his ear. He says, I love my wife and my children. I think over here it means the wife and children that they gave him. No, opposite. Yeah, it is the wife and children. It means the shifcha knanis. It means the shifcha knanis. Who ayev rabbi v'rabbi eno ayevai. Okay, now we're getting into more classical cases. He loves his master, but his master doesn't love him. Can't pierce his ear. He has to be good with you. He's like, can't wait for him to leave. This would be more typical. The master loves him, but he doesn't love his master. So he doesn't get his ear pierced. Says because he loves him. Let's say he's ill, but the master is not ill. Can't pierce his ears. Has to be good with you. It's not good. Let's say the master's ill and the slave is not ill. Has to be the same as him. Just be with him. Rabbi Barabaya is a question. Let's say they're both ill. What's the halacha? Do they have to be together? And they are together. Both of them are ill. And that's fine. Maybe it has to be good with him. And it's not good. They're ill. Take you. Question. What does that mean?
If you were to be married to somebody and then you go and tell the wife, you know what, I really have another wife, and stick around because I have her, that's why he has to stay like 50 years.
Yeah, but you'll see in a moment it's not 100% like that. Was good with him. It was good with you. That means he has to stay with you with your food. That means he eats the same food that you eat. You can't just feed him the scraps. Imach b'mishta, it's with you with your drink. You can't feed him the cheap drinks. You can't eat the clean bread and he eats the dark bread. And you drink the old wine. And he drinks the grape juice. You sleep on the pillows and he sleeps on the straw. Here we say someone buys a Vidivri, he's buying a master for himself. That he goes out from you, him and his children with you. Amar Reb Shimon. Shimon says, and what do you mean him and his children go and his sons go out with you? His sons were ensouled. We can't here his sons were being sponsored by the master. When he bought this slave, he has to support his whole family as well. Alimony and child service.
Why would somebody want to?
It's hard to imagine.
Support him, his
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
He gets the best of you food.
Yeah. I can only imagine someone that was very recently married without children. That would be cheap, like a Kyle guy. Cheap labor. Otherwise, if he has 10 kids or something, sold as a slave, it's a huge to pay for their education. Imagine yeshiva bills that this master just got.
The slave will cost him more money than his own family.
Right. Mikan Shirabi Chayev Mazainus Banav Ketsi B'davar. Similar to this, we have Hataimer and Balisha V'Yatzishtemai. If he's married, his wife goes out. Amar Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says, Nimkra. What do you mean? His wife wasn't even sold. Mikan Shirabi Chayev Mazainus Ishtay. Master has to support his wife as well with all their fancy dresses. Tzricha, and it's necessary to say both the children and the wife. Why? If it says just the children, because they can't support themselves. But the wife can go get a job. Maybe she should get her own job. And if it would say that the wife has to support, because it's not common for a woman to go around to collect money by the doors. But children, boys, can go around to doors and collect. We would say that he doesn't have to support them. So it has to say both. Was taught the Bryce if it would say his ear in the door. I would think that he would make a hole in the door, but not in his ear. It would be his ear, like corresponding to his ear at the door. What do you mean it wouldn't be in his ear? It says you have to make a hole. The other verse says you have to make a hole in his ear with an awl. I would say that you put the ear on one side, and you put it against the door, and then you would pierce the door where the ear is opposite it. So therefore it says he has to pierce the ear and the door. Means he has to pierce the ear until it reaches close to the door. It means all the way through the ear. When it says the door, I would think that whether the door is on the door frame, whether it's not on the door frame, because the door is a door, whether it's standing up or not. It says on the door frame. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he would teach this pasuk like perfume. Why is the ear different than all limbs of the body? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says, the ear that heard my voice at Har Sinai at the time that I said, that the Jewish people are my slaves and not slaves to slaves. And this person went and he acquired another master for himself, which means he became a slave to a slave. Yirtza, his ear should be pierced. Rab Shimon bar Rebbe Hayadairish. Rab Shimon bar Rebbe would teach as a mikra zekim in chaymer. He would teach this as perfume. In other words, something beautiful. Why do we have the doorpost? Why the doorpost? Maybe it should be something else. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, the doorpost and the door frame, the door and the door frame that we're witnesses in Egypt. When I jumped over the lintel and the two doorposts, I said, I said that the Jewish people should be slaves to me and not slaves to slaves. And actually took them out from slavery to freedom. And this person goes and he buys himself, he sells himself back into slavery, buys himself a master. He should get his ear pierced right in front of those witnesses. Okay, let's leave it over here. See where we
When
are.
you get up to the part around
Before the mission.
so I'm behind you.
Okay.
So, question?